Hey guys, this week we are working on the striking Stranger Things inspired cake, of course using 11's awesome romper suit pattern as the base. I'm starting with a 7-inch cake already covered in sugar paste. I have tutorials right from the baking of the cake to ganaching it and covering it here on my channel, and they're always linked in the description box below. I'm covering the board in white too using the toilet seat method. If you want to see this in more detail from start to finish, you'll also find that in the description box. It gives the bottom edge of your cake a nice clean finish. Instead of covering this in black paste, which can sometimes be sticky or tricky to work with and also maybe a little more expensive, you can have it done in a jiffy with some black airbrush colour. All the items I'm using are linked below and I use water-based airbrush colours. Just build up from grey until it turns black. Go around the whole thing and don't forget the edge of the sugar paste on the board too. Now, I know I will get asked how long this will take to dry, but this is like asking how long is a piece of string. It will depend on your paste, your airbrush colour brand and type, your climate. So do this first, set it to one side and then start working on your details. It will eventually turn from shiny to matte as it dries out. We are starting on the details with the name plaque and adding Tylo powder to my black paste to stiffen it up and make it dry quicker. I dip my paste into the powder until it's fully coated and then I knead it in. I can feel this is a little too soft, so I'm going to repeat the process again. Now I can feel it is much tougher to squeeze. Roll this out not too thinly and place it to one side. I've traced the name in a Stranger Things style font from a name generator on the internet. I just placed greaseproof paper over my monitor and traced over it with a pencil. I'm rolling out some red paste which I've actually put through my pasta machine. A manual pasta machine is a fab, cheap investment which will really help raise your detail game, especially when it comes to the patterns we are cutting out later. Trace around your letters with a Dresden tool to leave an impression in the paste. Then grab a sharp scalpel and trace around carefully to cut them out. Because it's still a little soft, your letters can be wiggly, so put them to one side to firm up in the right shape. I've also cut the edge. Once the letters keep their shape, apply a little water to the back and stick them to your black paste. I'm using a metal scraper to chop my paste into a rectangle. You can just use a ruler or freehand it if you prefer. Place this on a foam mat until it is fully dried. Here I've got 3 chunky discs of white paste. I've pulled out the amount for roughly 3 Eggos. I'm adding yellow paste, a touch of orange and a touch of brown to one of the discs to see what colour it creates. I colour paste with paste rather than gels, 1 because it's less sticky and 2 because I'm lazy. Here I've got a biscuit sort of colour, so I'm going to add more yellow and now distribute it through the full amount so it lightens it up. Now I'm going to take a piece, rolling it and keeping it quite chunky. You may have seen this impression mat before used in my Minecraft tutorial. This usually imprints squares that stick out. However, if you simply turn it over, you will push the squares in and have the lines raised instead. You just push it into your paste and peel it off to reveal the pattern. Now, me being a bit of a perfectionist, I feel the squares are too big for Eggos, so my other option was to raid the house for the perfect size square. And I eventually found it. This is a piece of Lego with a flat, unpatterned piece that snaps onto the top. You could use lids off small square containers, or something equally as squarish. It might take you a while, this was so hard to find. Everything I have in the house is round. But once you have your square, you want to dust the surface of your paste with sugar paste as there are no air holes and flat surfaces do sometimes like to stick. Imprint the squares quite close together for your waffle texture. I find this one gave it a better look that I was more happier with. Now I'm using a circle cutter around the 9 squares I've done and imprinting the extra pieces in carefully, trying not to squash the very outer edges. You will then want to go around with a Dresden tool to create that outer lip. Obviously you don't need to go in too much crazy detail like this, but I do like to get quite close to what I'm making if I can. Now this is a little bit too perfect for those frozen processed Eggos, so I'm just going to pull out little bits at the bottom and scoring in little divots here and there. Put that to one side whilst we work on the standing Eggo. You could of course make it just as we did and add a kebab stick inside, leaving it to fully dry, but we don't all have the luxury of drying time, or that it won't break in transit, which is where my favourite, the foam core, comes in. This allows me to make a topper and place it in straight away with zero drying time and zero stress of it collapsing and breaking on its final trip. Push a kebab stick inside the foam and dampen the whole front and edge with piping gel. Stick on a piece of your sugar paste that's quite chunky and squash the extra round the back for now. Use your circle cutter to get close to the original Eggo size you've made. Continue imprinting your squares, and you may need to use your circle cutter again as the paste squashes out. Now instead of scoring the lip in, we can add one to cover the edges, sticking it with piping gel. Just fill in the back with a circle of paste, joining the seams if you can. Brush off any excess icing sugar from your Eggos, 2 flat ones and a foam core one with a fluffy brush. Here I'm using brown water-based airbrush colour, which has a slight orange undertone, so it's great for your baked goods. I'm just giving a quick spray all over and then concentrating on the bottom edges and the little insides of the squares to give them a bit of depth. You'll see I'm also spraying a sort of L or C shape inside each square to imitate shadow. Now leave them to dry. The longest job is probably cutting out all your patterns, but luckily they are very generic shapes. I've rolled out all of my coloured pastes using the same thickness setting on my pasta machine, so they will all lay on the cake evenly and some won't stick out over the others. You won't regret getting a pasta machine, especially for jobs like this. If you find your paste tears or sticks, you may want to add a little bit of Tylo powder to help it along for the thinner applications. The shapes from hot pink are what I can only describe as little udder shapes and soft triangles. You then want to move through to white with very rough hexagon type shapes. The blue are almost rough leaf shapes, and you also want some squares. Just pull up a picture of the romper suit and cut everything freehand, it doesn't have to be perfect. Some of the pieces layer on top, such as this purple oak leaf shape onto the blue spike. Just press them down to merge them with some water. The squares, which I call little kites, are made up using 2 purple, 1 blue and 1 red triangle. I'm placing all of my shapes onto a foam pad to help them firm up so they are less floppy to handle. Once you can pick them up, stick them all around your cake with water. Don't fear if they stick up above your cake, just trim them level with a scalpel. It can look a little weird at first when you start, but it doesn't half pop once you've got everything on. With some black paint, paint some wiggly, uneven circles on your white shapes. These don't have to be neat, they're supposed to be thick and thinner in places. Once your name plaque has fully set, we're going to stick it on the front. As you can see, if I stick this on, it's going to stand out far away from the cake behind the S and the E. So I'm adding 2 balls of black paste behind these letters and dampening them with water to help stick it to the cake. This way it's nice and secure and it's not just being held on by that tiny point in the centre. Now it's time to assemble the Eggos on top, which you can do with just water. I have stood one up at the back and then decided I want a tilted Eggo on the front. I'm just sticking my edge to the one on the back with water. Now if you have any cake scraps, you can make a cake pop mixture for your ice cream, but I'm using a little bit of white ganache that I've coloured green. You can check out my other tutorials to see how I make this and how I colour it. I've left this to set in the fridge and pushed it into a blob in the centre of the bowl as it was setting. Then, just like you would with real ice cream, I'm using an ice cream scoop to scoop it up and place it into the cone. I would have preferred a waffle cone because obviously those are on the god tier when it comes to ice cream, but with it being winter and lockdown, the 3 supermarkets I visited only had wafer ones. Once you've used your chocolate for your ice cream, melt the remainder ever so slightly in the microwave until you can stir it. Then I'm adding a plop on the top of the cake for the melted ice cream. I'm not going to push this into a drip down the side as the drip will most likely follow the shapes instead of going straight down and it will look a little messy. Whilst this is still runny, push your ice cream cone down into it at an angle. It sticks pretty well. And then add in a few bits of chopped dark chocolate because of course I didn't have any chocolate chips, which would have made the job easier. The reason I chose the chocolate chip is because the cake is also flavoured as mint chocolate. For those now iconic Christmas lights, you just want to roll a ball of paste into a point by squeezing your palms together. Place it on a foam mat and continue in various colours of your choice. For the tops of the bulbs, I've made some dark green paste and I'm rolling it across the worktop using a fork. This will create little lines which can be accentuated by squashing it down. I chopped these in half and stuck them to the top of the bulbs with water. With the same green, roll 2 very thin strings of paste, lay them side by side and then roll one hand up and one hand down to create the rope effect. The more you pull, the tighter the rope pattern will get. Use little bits of water to stick the string at various points, snaking it and looping it around the whole board. Stick your bulbs on with water, pushing the rope into the back of them where needed. And we're done. I think this is one of my favourite cakes so far this year, as it's just so striking with the patterns and colours. I would love to do more in this type of style. And for those true fans of Stranger Things, they will guess this theme straight away. I hope you managed to pick up a few tips from this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe to see a new one every Tuesday. Thanks guys, see you next week.